The hospital did not exist on any map, yet its fluorescent lights burned every hour of every day, and its machines hummed with the convincing indifference of modern medicine. It was a place designed not to heal the body, but to dissect the mind of a man who had survived every trap the Cold War had set for him, until now. For nearly 2 decades, the Central Intelligence Agency had chased the shadow of the KGB Mastermind, known in internal files as Volkov. His real name had been erased behind layers of aliases, dead records, and fabricated biographies. To American intelligence, he was not a person so much as a pattern, a recurring signature at the scene of compromised assets, vanished informants, and dismantled spy networks across Europe and Asia. Whenever a CIA operation collapsed without warning, Volkov's invisible fingerprints were usually present. He had never been photographed clearly. He had never been intercepted speaking in his own voice. He did not recruit agents in the traditional sense, nor did he rely on easily traceable couriers. He specialized in long-term manipulation, embedding people into positions of trust years before they were needed. He believed that the most effective weapon was patience and that ideology was useful only as camouflage. By the early 1980s, the CIA had concluded that Volkov was not simply reacting to American operations, he was anticipating them. Entire strategies appeared to unravel before being deployed, suggesting that he understood how his enemies thought at a structural level. He was not fighting the CIA, he was outthinking it. That realization forced the agency into a rare admission. Volkov could not be caught by surveillance, signals intelligence, or traditional counterintelligence measures. He could only be caught through misdirection on a scale large enough to alter his perception of reality itself. The idea of the hospital began as an abstract concept inside a classified brainstorming session at Langley. Analysts reviewed Volkov's psychological profile, compiled from fragments of defector testimony and circumstantial evidence. A consistent theme emerged. Volkov believed deeply in controlled environments. He trusted systems more than people. Institutions, when properly designed, represented order, predictability, and safety. Chaos, he believed, could always be engineered away. The hospital would become the ultimate controlled environment. The CIA selected an abandoned medical complex on the outskirts of a neutral European city, one whose political ambiguity made it a favored crossroads for intelligence operatives. The building had once served as a private surgical clinic before falling into disuse. Its existing infrastructure provided plausible deniability, but almost nothing of the original interior remained once construction began. Engineers stripped the building down to its concrete skeleton and rebuilt it according to the specifications of a modern trauma ward. Walls were reinforced to conceal wiring and observation corridors. Medical equipment was either real or indistinguishable from it. Air systems were calibrated to replicate the sterile chill of a functioning hospital. Even the smell was engineered, a subtle blend of antiseptic and recycled air designed to evoke familiarity. Every detail served a psychological purpose. The ward itself was not designed for patients in general. It was designed for one patient in particular. Intelligence suggested that Volkov suffered from a rare but manageable cardiac condition, one that required regular monitoring. He trusted medicine, but only under strict control. He never sought treatment openly, instead using carefully vetted private facilities. This vulnerability, hidden beneath layers of operational paranoia, was the narrow opening the CIA needed. The agency's plan required not just architectural deception, but human precision. Doctors, nurses, orderlies, and administrators were recruited from a pool of intelligence officers trained extensively in medical protocol. Some had real medical backgrounds, others underwent accelerated but rigorous instruction to pass any conceivable scrutiny. They memorized case histories, emergency procedures, and hospital bureaucracy down to the most mundane details. They also memorized Volkov. Every movement he was likely to make, every habit, every suspected superstition was modeled and rehearsed. The ward staff practiced responding to emergencies that had not yet happened and conversations they would never be allowed to have. No one was permitted to improvise. Improvisation was chaos, and chaos was something Volkov could sense. The trap required bait, and bait required risk. The CIA leaked intelligence through carefully compromised channels, suggesting the existence of a Western defector with access to classified Soviet medical research. The defector's story was partially true, supported by authentic documents, but its real function was to intersect with Volkov's interests. The trail implied that the defector was receiving treatment at a discreet medical facility after suffering a serious cardiac episode. Volkov took the bait, not immediately, but inevitably. He did not approach directly. Instead, he activated layers of reconnaissance, deploying intermediaries who believed they were acting independently. They verified the hospital's legitimacy, its staffing records, and its supply chains. Each verification was designed to succeed. Each background check returned precisely the information Volkov expected to find. Months passed before he acted. When Volkov finally entered the hospital, he did so under an assumed identity, supported by documentation older than some of the doctors pretending to treat him. He was admitted not as a spy, but as a patient. The irony was deliberate and complete. From the moment he crossed the threshold, every sensor in the building began recording. Cameras hidden behind mirrored glass tracked his gait, microphones captured breathing patterns, pressure-sensitive flooring mapped his movements. Even the heart monitor attached to his chest served a dual purpose, recording physiological responses to controlled stimuli. Volkov noticed everything, or so he believed. What he did not notice was that the hospital did not react to him the way real institutions did. There were no minor inefficiencies, no small contradictions in paperwork or procedure. Everything worked too well. For a man who had learned to read flaws as indicators of truth, perfection itself became a subtle irritant. The CIA counted on that irritation. They introduced controlled inconsistencies, not in structure, but in narrative. A nurse's credentials included a gap that could be interpreted as classified service. A medical chart referenced a procedure using slightly outdated terminology, something a Soviet-trained doctor might recognize. These were not mistakes. They were invitations. Volkov began to test the environment. He triggered small medical complaints, observing response times. He feigned confusion to see how staff adapted. He manipulated conversations toward geopolitical topics without ever mentioning them directly. Each test confirmed what the CIA wanted him to believe, that this hospital was not what it appeared to be, but not in the way he suspected. He concluded that the hospital was real, but compromised by Western intelligence attempting to lure lower-level Soviet assets. He did not believe the trap was for him. That assumption was his first error. As days turned into weeks, the hospital became a closed world. Volkov's condition required extended observation, giving the CIA time to tighten the psychological vice. The wards subtly altered his sleep cycles using light modulation and medication adjustments. His sense of time blurred. Fatigue lowered his resistance without triggering alarm. Meanwhile, analysts constructed a mirror version of Volkov's operational network inside the hospital's narrative. Patients mirrored agents he had lost. Doctors reflected handlers he had trusted. Even the architecture began to echo places from his past, recreating spatial memories he did not consciously recognize. The goal was not interrogation, it was erosion. Volkov began to experience moments of uncertainty, not about the hospital, but about himself. He reviewed memories and found inconsistencies, not because they were false, but because they had been deliberately reframed through environmental cues. The CIA was not extracting information, it was prompting voluntary reconstruction. Every night, analysts reviewed the data. Micro-expressions during routine exams, heart rate fluctuations when specific names appeared in medical notes, eye movements triggered by certain accents. The ward became a laboratory, and Volkov its most complex specimen. Eventually, the CIA introduced the final layer of the trap. A simulated emergency unfolded one morning, precise enough to bypass Volkov's skepticism. Equipment malfunctioned, staff reacted with rehearsed urgency. The controlled chaos activated Volkov's instinct to intervene, to impose order. For the first time, he revealed knowledge no patient should possess, correcting procedures and predicting outcomes. That moment confirmed everything. The hospital responded not with confrontation, but with acceptance. Staff adjusted their behavior to reflect recognition without acknowledgement. Volkov interpreted this as confirmation that his identity was known, but tolerated. He believed he had reached a position of leverage. In reality, he had crossed the final threshold. The CIA gradually restricted his access to external information under the guise of medical necessity. Communications were delayed, then lost. His network stopped responding, not because they were captured, but because the CIA had already mapped and neutralized them using insights derived from his behavior. By the time Volkov realized the hospital was not a trap within a larger game, but the game itself, escape was no longer an option. The ward began to change, subtly at first. Fewer patients, shorter corridors, windows that no longer revealed consistent views. The environment reflected his internal collapse, reinforcing the inevitability of containment. The hospital was no longer pretending to be part of the outside world. It had become his world. Volkov's final days in the ward were not marked by resistance, but by resignation. His mind, once a weapon, turned inward, attempting to outmaneuver itself. The CIA did not need to extract a confession. His patterns, reactions, and adaptations had already provided more intelligence than any interrogation ever could. When he was finally removed from the hospital, there were no dramatic arrests or public disclosures. Officially, he died under an assumed name after complications from heart failure. His records were sealed, his existence erased once more, this time permanently. The hospital was dismantled within weeks. Walls came down, equipment was destroyed, and staff dispersed back into anonymity. The building returned to silence, its purpose fulfilled. To the world, it remained an abandoned clinic. To the CIA, it became a case study in the future of intelligence warfare. The lesson was clear. In an age of masters who thrived on secrecy and anticipation, the most effective trap was not force or fear, but environment. Reality itself could be engineered, and when done correctly, even the most brilliant mind could not tell where the deception ended and choice began. The Cold War would continue, as it always had, but one of its most dangerous architects had been undone not by bullets or betrayal, but by a hospital that never healed, and a ward designed to let a man believe he was still in control long after he no longer was.